Hi folks, welcome to the Financial Argument. If you are watching this video on your phone, it would not be wrong to say that you may already be holding the device you will soon use as your digital food passport. For years, I have warned you to be prepared, for yourself and for your loved ones. And by now, you probably understand what my videos about food shortages and the food crisis have really been warning about. But understand this. The heart of this issue goes far beyond rising prices. It goes far beyond empty shelves caused by a broken supply chain. The real issue is that even if the shelves are fully stocked, and even if you have enough available credit on your card, the decision of whether you are allowed to buy those products may no longer be entirely yours. Please watch this video until the end. I will show you how this is unfolding right now, what we need to do to prepare, and how all the pieces of this puzzle fit together. The most important thing you need to know is this: they do not implement these systems by asking for your permission. They use a simple formula that has worked for centuries. First, a problem is created, and very often that problem begins with oil, just as it did during the 1970s oil crisis, and just as we are seeing today through a deliberately disrupted supply chain. But it is worth remembering that what we are facing today is far worse than what people faced during the 1970s oil crisis. That crisis was a transition stage on the road that brought us here. After that crisis, many things were dismantled. Many of the structures the system wanted in place were gradually established. And those of my viewers who are old enough to remember those years witnessed that transformation themselves. They will remember it, and they will confirm it. Once the problem has been created, they generate the reaction. As people begin suffering under manufactured shortages, they begin demanding safety, stability, and protection. And then comes the solution that was already waiting for them: a system that increases control. That is how a process of control begins, through rationing, digital ration cards, fuel limits, and eventually digital permission over the basic things people need in order to survive. When you look at the shortages unfolding before your eyes today, if all you see is rising oil prices and a broken supply chain, you are making a very serious mistake. The question you are probably asking yourself right now is, can I afford this? But what is approaching now may force people to ask a much darker question. Am I still allowed to buy this? Because billions of people around the world are already living under systems that are bringing this question into their daily lives. And that number is growing every day. From the largest countries in the world to smaller nations, I'm going to show you how rationing, digital ration cards, food shortages, fuel limits, and manufactured shortages are already becoming part of people's lives. And what these examples show me is that we have reached the stage where the global control plan is accelerating. Based on everything I knew, I did not believe we would reach this stage before 2030. But what is unfolding before our eyes tells me that their timeline has accelerated. We may be much closer to this system than I ever expected. And the food passport plan may be one of the first parts of that system to directly affect everyone, because food is the most convincing issue of all. This manufactured control plan is no longer a theory whispered in dark corners. It is no longer hidden. It is unfolding right in front of us, faster than many people realize. And this time, the plan goes far beyond food shortages. It means rationing, monitoring, and digital permission. Ultimately, it means deciding who gets access to food, fuel, electricity, and the basic things people need to continue their day-to-day lives. Before we go deeper into what is happening across the world and how this control plan works, remember this. The U.S. is already burning through its emergency oil reserves at a pace never seen before. On March 20th, the U.S. Strategic Petroleum Reserve held 415.4 million barrels of oil. By May 22nd, it had fallen to 365.1 million barrels. More than 50 million barrels were gone in just over 2 months. And in the week ending May 15th alone, the U.S. withdrew nearly 9.92 million barrels from the reserve, the largest weekly drawdown ever recorded. This is not an ordinary oil tank. This is the emergency reserve built to protect the country when the system comes under severe pressure. And now that reserve is being drained at record speed. But do you not find something extremely strange here? Before all of this happened, China spent 2025 building a massive crude oil buffer. While prices were hovering near $60, China was stockpiling an estimated 1 million barrels per day, buying discounted Russian, Iranian, and Venezuelan crude. Now the engineered crisis has arrived. The U.S. is draining its emergency reserves, but China is sitting on the massive stockpile it built before the shock began. And that's not all. Roughly 166 million barrels of Iranian crude had already been positioned in eastern waters, close to Chinese buyers and outside the immediate danger surrounding the Strait of Hormuz. And I believe the strangest part is this. While the rest of the world is being dragged into the consequences of this crisis, China is the country least affected by it. Because China does not only have the oil it stockpiled before the crisis, Iran is also moving oil and LPG toward China by rail. After the U.S. maritime blockade began, the number of freight trains transporting oil and LPG toward China reportedly tripled. The China-Iran rail corridor, which became operational in 2025, reduces delivery time from roughly 1 month by sea to around 15 days. So while the U.S. is draining its emergency reserve, China already has its stockpile. It's positioned Iranian crude, and another route bringing energy directly toward it. Do you really believe all of this is just a coincidence? Keep this in mind as we now look at what is happening with rationing, engineered shortages, and restrictions across the world. Because while strategic reserves are being drained, supply chains are being disrupted, and ordinary people are being pushed toward limits and controlled access, one country had already positioned itself before the crisis even began. Let's start with Europe. Fuel rationing has already begun in Slovenia, where private drivers are limited to 50 liters per day, while businesses and farmers are capped at 200 liters. Italy is now facing the same kind of pressure in aviation. Jet fuel shortages forced 4 airports to ration supplies, with priority given to medical, state, and long-distance flights. Ireland has seen something even more explosive. Fuel shortages triggered nationwide unrest as farmers and hauliers blocked roads, fuel depots, and key oil infrastructure, leaving more than 100 petrol stations without fuel. The same pattern is appearing in Russian-controlled Sevastopol, where gasoline sales were reduced to 20 liters per vehicle, and diesel was reportedly restricted to coupon holders. Sweden has already warned that fuel rationing may become necessary. The European Union itself has also confirmed that rationing is on the table if the energy shock continues. Britain shows another side of the same crisis. Ordinary families are already rationing their own lives, cutting heating, skipping meals, and going without basic necessities as energy bills rise again. And it's worth remembering that British food policy expert Professor Tim Lang had already warned that although the UK was not officially at war, it was facing a wartime-scale food challenge. Now let's move to Asia. And despite everything I just showed you about China, even China is now protecting its own domestic fuel supply, halting new fuel export contracts, and trying to cancel shipments already committed. Sri Lanka has started fuel rationing through a QR code system, while schools, universities, and government offices are being closed on certain days to preserve fuel. Bangladesh has moved into fuel rationing as shortages and panic buying spread, closing universities and expanding planned blackouts. Myanmar restricted private vehicle use through odd and even license plate rules, then tightened the system with QR code fuel tracking. India has begun protecting household cooking gas supplies over industrial and commercial users, while LPG refills remain restricted. Nepal is now distributing half-filled cooking gas cylinders. The Maldives has also cut cooking gas supplies in half. Taiwan has now begun water rationing as supplies come under increasing pressure. Iran already controls gasoline access through electronic fuel cards and monthly quotas, while shortages are driving more people into long lines and the black market. The Philippines has shortened the work week in parts of the government and ordered public agencies to reduce fuel and electricity use. Vietnam is urging citizens to drive less, share cars, use public transport, and reduce unnecessary travel. South Korea has tightened driving restrictions in public institutions and warned that wider limits may follow. Thailand has already prepared an emergency plan that includes fuel rationing and restricted operating hours if the crisis reaches its next stage. And in Yemen, the shortage has already reached food distribution, with wholesalers cutting the amount of food supplied to retailers. This is not one isolated shortage in one troubled country. From fuel to cooking gas, from water to electricity, from QR code rationing to food distribution, restrictions are spreading across Asia. And the systems being introduced are no longer only limiting what people can afford. They are beginning to limit what people are allowed to receive. Now let's look at Africa. Anyone who has followed Africa knows that energy rationing was already a reality in parts of the continent long before this crisis. But what is happening now has moved far beyond ordinary load shedding. Fuel restrictions are spreading across Ethiopia, Mali, Mozambique, and Madagascar, with priority access, refueling limits, emergency measures, and long lines becoming part of daily life. Electricity restrictions are tightening in Egypt, South Sudan, Kenya, and Mauritius through early business closures, reduced public lighting, rotational power cuts, and limits on non-essential electricity use. In Egypt, where a significant share of the economy depends on tourism, even cafes and restaurants have been ordered to close after 9 p.m. as part of energy rationing measures. And in South Africa, the crisis has reached water rationing, with households and businesses facing interrupted supply and temporary outages. This is no longer the old pattern of occasional blackouts. Fuel is being controlled, electricity is being rationed, water access is being restricted. Across Africa, the basic systems people depend on every day are being pushed into emergency control. Now let's look across the Americas. Fuel and gas rationing is already restricting ordinary life in Cuba, Peru, Ecuador, Guyana, and Bolivia. Cuba has moved into severe fuel rationing. Peru has rationed natural gas. Even oil-producing Ecuador and Guyana have been hit by fuel shortages, long lines, and supply limits. Bolivia is also facing fuel rationing and growing unrest. Water restrictions have reached St. Vincent and the Grenadines and Jamaica, while Costa Rica is already preparing for possible water rationing as El Niño pressure grows. Electricity restrictions are also tightening in Venezuela, where many regions are already living through repeated blackouts and unofficial rationing. And in the U.S., shortage pressure has already entered the automotive supply chain, with Nissan dealerships rationing motor oil as product availability tightens. From fuel and natural gas to water, electricity, and motor oil, controlled access is no longer limited to one region of the world. It is spreading across the Americas as well. Now let's move to Australia and the Pacific. Australia has already mapped out fuel rationing measures, including limits on how much motorists would be allowed to buy if shortages deepen. New Zealand has also prepared a fuel emergency plan that could impose public rationing during a prolonged shortage. Fiji prepared power rationing as fuel pressure strained the electricity system, avoiding it only by pushing additional fuel costs onto households. And across smaller Pacific Island states, the crisis is already disrupting basic survival. Tuvalu and the Marshall Islands declared states of emergency, while Papua New Guinea and Kiribati face growing pressure on food transport, work, schools, and healthcare access. By now, I've shown you the engineered shortages created by this crisis and the countries already entering rationing or preparing rationing systems, large and small, without leaving anyone out. And none of this is hidden anymore. The shortages are being reported. The restrictions are being announced. The rationing systems are being prepared in public. And this will not simply pass over one country, one class of people, or one part of the world. Well, now ask yourself, where does the food passport fit into all of this? What happens when food access itself becomes the next thing to be controlled? And when is this going to happen? For those still struggling to find a reasonable answer, let me help you. Do not assume food access control must arrive with a dramatic announcement one morning before it becomes real. The digital infrastructure capable of enforcing it is already being installed, and the timeline points in one direction. The rationing systems I just showed you are appearing in 2026, but look at what was being formalized immediately before that. In Europe, under EUID 2.0, every EU member state must provide at least one European digital identity wallet by the end of 2026. They call its use voluntary. But the system is being built to connect identity with official records and to be accepted wherever strong digital identification is required. In the United Kingdom, the government announced a new digital ID system in September 2025, initially presenting it as mandatory for right-to-work checks. Now look at India. Aadhaar already connects more than 1.4 billion people to a digital identity system used across banks, telecoms, government services, and welfare access. And this is not only a theory about what could go wrong. Aadhaar-linked authentication failures have already been associated with people being unable to receive ration benefits and essential welfare services. Then, on February 15, 2026, India officially launched a CBDC-based digital food coupon pilot in Gujarat. Read that carefully. A digital identity system already connected to more than 1 billion people. A programmable digital currency coupon. A defined group of eligible beneficiaries. A defined quantity of food grains. Authorized shops only. Digitally traceable transactions. At that point, there's no need to speak only in the language of conspiracy theories anymore. The food can be programmed. The access can be measured. The transaction can be tracked. Egypt shows the same direction from another angle. Its electronic ration card system already controls access to subsidized bread and 33 essential commodities, while placing quotas on basic products such as sugar and cooking oil. And before someone says, "What is wrong with that? Everything is becoming digital," remember how these systems are sold to the public. Everyone is doing it, or one ID for everything. That's how people are trained to accept a system before they understand what that system can eventually be used to deny. And please remember Canada. During the Freedom Convoy crisis, the government demonstrated that access to the financial system could be frozen or suspended when authorities decided people had crossed the line. India shows that food access can be programmed. Egypt shows that rationing can be digitized. Canada shows that access can be cut off. So when I said at the beginning of this video, if you're watching this video on your phone, it would not be wrong to say that you may already be holding the device you will soon use as your digital food passport. I hope you understand that sentence much better now. Because this is no longer only about whether such a system can exist. The pieces are already being placed on the table. Well, if you now understand how these systems are being implemented in the 21st century, through manufactured shortages, rationing, and digitally controlled access restrictions, you may be wondering how you can protect yourself and your family from what's coming. Let me explain. First, never forget this. In this reset process, everything is ultimately about currency and control. And understand that what you are shown is never the real reason. Even if a miracle happened today, even if every conflict were suddenly resolved and the Strait of Hormuz reopened, returning the supply chain to what it once was could still take months, even years. Because the real objective is to create endless conflicts. The countries don't matter, the regions don't matter. If one conflict ends, another begins. The conflicts of our time are no longer designed to be won the way you were taught in school. What matters is that they never end. Prepare accordingly. The decision is yours. But if you have savings, or if you are planning to build savings, it may be wise to prepare through real physical assets such as gold and silver, things that are not digital and that may help you remain stronger against the system. The second most important point is this: if the measures they officially describe as temporary measures, but which are actually permanent measures, have not yet been announced where you live, then you still have time. If you are still able to prepare, that matters not because you should panic, but because you still have a choice. Before that choice is taken away from you, the smartest thing you can do is bring as many of your family's basic needs as possible under your own control. Food, water, basic medication, essential products for transportation, alternative ways to pay and gain access. These are not luxuries. These are the first layer of your basic line of defense against becoming completely dependent on the system in the period ahead. Improve your knowledge of survival preparedness. Join communities. Build connections with people who, like you, are thinking about how to protect themselves and their families. Because they sold you the lie that you don't need anyone. They sold that illusion to our women, to our young people, and to everyone else. And the result is a world filled with people who feel alone in the middle of crowds, who have lost patience with one another, and who have become vulnerable to every kind of manipulation. The greatest thing that carried the human race above every other living creature was not intelligence alone, it was our ability to build social cooperation. Do not become part of the moral collapse of this age that is destroying that ability. And there's something else you must understand. Even if you prepare for your basic and financial needs, even if you become far less dependent on the system, another danger remains. Most people may technically be free to reject this plan. They can simply starve. They can live like the homeless, with no access to money, healthcare, or government services. And there will also be people who made no preparations at all, and who may eventually lose access to everything they depend on. At that point, a different problem begins for you and for your loved ones. You must be prepared for the risks that desperation can bring with it. That is a reality of life. You cannot change it. I hope you understand what I mean. And finally, try to own your own home, your own garden, or your own land. Try to have a place you can manage for yourself, a place where you are not completely dependent on rules imposed by someone else. Move away from luxury consumption. Stop chasing the things that look fancy today and begin focusing on the things that are real. They are trying to prevent you from owning these things as well. They are trying to prevent you from owning land. But that will be the subject of my next video. Please don't forget to share this video with your loved ones. Tell them what's happening. There are still people on this platform waiting to be warned, waiting to be awakened. I'm trying to reach as many of them as possible, so please continue supporting the financial argument. God bless y'all.